So I just start talking. Yeah. This is kind of the equivalent of creating a Minecraft YouTube channel with your mates. Wait, no. I thought, can you just start again?
Start. Let's go.
Alright, so... Oh, I just started a sentence with so. I don't know.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I was saying to Max how I like the form of discussion where you're just throwing things out there and just, seeing
like an
what
intellectual
happens.
arsonist. You just set fire to things and then see what happens.
I mean more... I was watching a video, I won't name the chap. He was talking about the merits of the Victorian age and the way the curtain of shame was on everyone. Mm-hmm. So as if you were going out and being strange immoral. And what was considered immoral, at least, although you'd be repressing it, at least people were aware it was immoral. Now, I don't know if the point wasn't looking at whether it was good for society, it was just looking at it was a benefit, that one aspect. And
in what way did it benefit them?
Because at least when people were doing things that were wrong, they knew they were wrong, even if they were doing it privately or whatever.
Yeah, but they were also fucking addicted to opium and cocaine and...
What I mean is that it's a good discussion. Too much...
Caused a whole slew of psychosexual paranoia that is still haunting people today and makes them insecure about their sexuality.
Alright, I would like to make clear, I'm not saying that homosexuality is immoral.
Who brought homosexuality?
Well, that was probably
any sexuality.
Right, but that was the most common. It would have been repressed, I'd say. Or even if people have just got...
was repressed.
Alright, yeah, but at least when people are doing kind of...
Because it actually goes back to a medieval book written by Bernard of Clairvaux, who sort of wrote a manual of how man and wife should...
have intercourse.
Go forth and prosper, exactly.
The driest smut mag ever.
Yeah, well, it was basically missionary, and that's it. That's why it is called missionary, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Also, in the sort of English colonies, where the Puritans took control, if you were shagging and the woman was on top, that was considered sodomy.
Yeah, that's where it comes from, though.
Yeah.
It's Bernard of Clairvaux.
My point is that too often in sort of debate...
Not Bernard, Benedict.
People just take a side... And people decide what side they're on, and they just want to argue that point. Whereas I think it's really great to just throw stuff out there and just discuss individual merits.
Like take a step back and not actually
postmodernism.
No, but I guess you can make a case for not overly involving yourself in the outcome. Because I think what we've highlighted in the last discussion we had was that. The more you test each other, the more everything starts to break down, and it becomes more of an intellectual dick measuring contest.
Yeah. The previous one where we were debating metaphysics and fucking God, and then even the metrics of the mechanisms of the conversation become distorted, and it doesn't become it's not a conversation anymore. It's more like you forget what you were saying, the other person forgets what they were saying before that, and it all becomes about the point. Yeah,
that you're arguing as opposed to
something we were discussing the other day. How like certain people, I think we were actually talking about Ben Shapiro, are good at debating, but not good at
listening.
Debating. Well, not actually good at debating.
Good at in like a Machiavellian sense.
In a very literal sense, they're good at winning an argument, but they're not good at
making it a productive.
Jordan Peterson is part of that. He'll just get you out on a technicality.
Yeah,
it is literally an intellectual sparring match.
Yeah.
And he would be what you would consider in the UFC a boring fighter to watch. Because he'll just grind you down and take you down all the time without actually hurting you or doing anything. At times. I think Jordan Peterson less so than Ben Shapiro because he's a lawyer.
Yeah, that's
we were watching
what they do.
We decided for a nostalgia trip to go onto those 2015 Ben Shapiro destroys feminist liberal, and one of them, this guy challenges him alright, where did you get those statistics? And like that, he was able to name where
which
it was
is
from.
Impressive.
Yeah,
he's
cool.
A really smart guy.
Yeah,
like one of those hyper intellectual memorizes everything.
He's definitely a bit of a spectrum boy.
Well, you go on record with that one.
Did you not?
I don't know.
To be that sort of
I don't know. I think a lot of lawyers are like this.
He's quite literal.
A lot of lawyers are like this, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just...
Are you saying that a lot... would you be saying that a lot of lawyers are spectrum boys?
No. That's your words. I would say that it attracts a certain group of people that have that skill set. Yeah.
Very literal, very...
Yeah.
Which isn't
high memory span, long memory span rather, and able to really take, like I said, this is what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about I know this is bad podcasting or whatever, but we were discussing the grammar / semantics of a sign. Yeah, but that's literally what they would get you out on. Because the sign says, what was it again?
The earth is yours, take it back.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, if it was yours in the first place, how can you take it back?
And then me and Louis made the point that it's not a matter of finders, keepers, losers, weepers.
Yes.
It's a matter of it's still yours if someone's taken it. Like, you stole my £500, it's still mine.
I get
it's
that.
also kind of missing the point of what was trying to be said.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
which is fair.
And I did that purposefully.
Yeah, it was for the sake of humour. But when people do that sincerely in arguments, just like...
Yeah, but that doesn't mean, though, that I wouldn't purely technically have a leg to stand on, because I can say, well, who is we in this sense, and who is our, and who are we taking it back from,
and in what measure is it ours?
Exactly. So there's loads of shit to break down.
And I think that's how these people quite often win their arguments and win their...
Yeah, but that's because I think those tiny little details can be really important, though. I think they have that's in part what fueled the Jordan Peterson
That's the
hype.
two sides of Peterson, really, is that it's great that he can be so precise in his speech, but when debating...
He expects the same of everyone else.
Yeah,
yes.
And also it means that because he places such a high value on it, he's so hyper-focused on that can be almost...
It bogs him down at points, for sure. It actually detracts from what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
Because he's so insistent. That's why whenever you see someone show, like, I keep going back to the debate with Sam Harris, or the many ones, the three, that he rocks up there with like a laptop and a whole list of things he was going to take, while Sam Harris just sits there and chills.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of really, what the fuck is this? It really characterizes him, I think, or shows you who he is. That's not a bad thing necessarily. Well, no. Sam Harris is a scientist. He's a neuroscientist.
But I mean in the way he's thinking, sort of...
No. I think he was just over-prepared. One of those people that just...
You're right.
We're sort of like anti-creative.
Come up... No, I think he's under the mindset that whatever he doesn't have cognitively, he needs to make up with hard work. Which is a very puritanical Christian ethic.
Protestant work ethic.
Yeah. Which is fair enough, but
some merit to it,
it doesn't seduce me.
No,
that sort of way of thinking. I get it to some extent. Of course, you need to make it up with hard work, but to the degree, it shows you how important that it was for him to defeat the other.
But also, like, following that logic to its natural conclusion is why you have, like, the lazy intellectual. Who's
of course.
Got a brilliant mind but just can't be bothered using it.
Yeah, of course. But you get extremes at both ends, right?
Yeah.
The best thing is to be in the middle and be balanced.
Yeah.
That's all I would say. I'm not saying either one is wrong. They're both right, I suppose. But it's the measure to which you take it.
Could you say that, at least from what I've watched with the Sam Harris-Jordan Peterson debate, Peterson's points are more compelling but are easier to just kind of take down?
Nah.
In that he makes really compelling points, but Sam often gets him on sort of specifics, maybe in a similar way.
Well, I think what Sam rightfully accuses him of is the fact that he's looking at it through a filter. He's looking at it through this sort of Judeo-Christian filter. And he can gain he can make the same case, essentially, by looking at just seemingly random historical figures that have written either poetry, literature, or some form of verbal, or they've written something down that equates to that wisdom. And you can gain that wisdom from reading all sorts of people, not just Christian. Whereas with Peterson, it seems like it's my way or the highway.
Do you not think that was more of a case
he's sort of uncompromising?
It would be more
in his conclusions.
It would be more compelling because he's arguing for it, whereas Sam was more arguing against it.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like
probably.
Pearson's will be more compelling because it's a positive ideology.
I don't think.
Whereas Sam's is negative in that regard.
I also think Jordan Peterson just isn't interested in learning anything new.
Yeah.
But the times he gets excited, he's interested in what someone else is saying, is where it's a new way of expressing something he's already been trying to say.
That's a good point. Yeah, and in a lot of ways, from what you can take, if you watch his Joe Rogan podcasts, actually, there's a few things that I noticed, because they were talking about Cyclone B at one point, and Joe Rogan just says, "Oh, wouldn't that have been Cyclone A?" He's like, "Wait, what?" It's like, well, Cyclone A was the original, gas that was used for wiping out rats in factories and stuff, and it was made without a smell, so that people could notice it and walk away. And that was Cyclone A. And then all of a sudden George Peterson's like, oh yeah, well maybe it would be. And then he goes on a talk show or something and he's like, did you know what they were using in blah 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 blah? He uses the same exact argument. It was Cyclone A. And he changes the whole thing. Which is, it's a minute, tiny little...
Do you want to give reference to what it was, as in Zyklon A and Zyklon B, as in the gas that was used in the gas chambers?
Yes.
Of
the Nazis.
Concentration camps.
But, and it's a tiny little detail. Again, I'm getting bogged down on the details, but it sort of confirms what you're saying, that he sort of only picks up stuff that he can add to his armor if you want. Which is fair enough. If you've got to have a clear stance, I suppose, because he's that in the manner in which he came forth into the public eye. You either get carried by that momentum or you get overwhelmed.
It is also more useful to us as people who would watch his things rather than interact with him, that he'd have a hard stance because it's easier to riff off. If he's more wishy-washy,
we spend more time honing one argument in a way.
It means that we don't need to hone that argument.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, of course. But that would be. You can make that case for any point of view.
Yeah,
or any person that represents a very clear stance.
Yeah.
You can make that case for Boris Johnson. You need that sort of voice in the crowd. You need the voice in the crowd so that you can hear it, and so that you hear that idea articulated, and so that you can either take it apart, which is what we're doing, I suppose, or take it on.
Yeah, which we have already taken on in certain degrees, and then rejected other ideas.
It's more, look, at the way I see it, right? It seems, and this is true for anything that you'll see, I think, is that everybody seems to have an idea of what is going on, and nobody's ever right. But in the process of pursuing that idea, they unearth a lot of actual information. It's sort of like when you have you get this in social science or in hard sciences. You have a hypothesis. That hypothesis is nearly always wrong, but what you actually find out during the research, when you research that hypothesis, is actually credible.
And the hypothesis is Peterson, and him having that firm hypothesis.
Yes, and now it's people checking in on that.
That's what's going to uncover the goodies.
Yeah, not the real truth, but a little bit of truth here and there. So it's sort of that's what it seems like to me. Yeah. With regards to sciences and all that, because we did a lot of stuff in social sciences where we had to we had to form our own hypothesis, our own theory, and everything, and we had to do the research, and it wasn't right in any case. But even when the information that you find completely contradicts what you proposed, it's still fascinating, because then it shows you something that you never ever thought of most of the time, which, you know. Getting phoned by his mum.
Yeah.
By the way, you should pour some of that whiskey in your coffee.
Nice. I've already had my
really
coffee,
nice.
I'm afraid.
Huh?
I've already had my coffee.
Oh, I see.
Pour some of that whiskey then. Keep it going, lads. I need to text mum.
Yeah.
I feel that's...
We didn't really cover anything we actually set out to cover.
Yeah, I was going to say, what were our 3 topics?
Oh, we're only, how many minutes in?
15 minutes in.
I know, obviously. We're not nearly done.
And we said we'd ramble for a bit at the beginning.
That's what you want.
True.
We're having Jameson Irish whiskey.
Oh, name drop.
I say Irish whiskey because colloquially it's known as piss. But, for context.
It's actually quite nice, though.
It is.
It's a nice...
Oh, I'm just being a xenophobe. Don't mind me.
Wild. So what were we actually?
Brexit,
that's the one.
Oh yeah, so do you think I'm just going to open this to the room, I suppose. Do you think this whole vote of no confidence thing will actually go through?
So, my senses with again.
Sorry.
The number needed for the vote of no confidence is 48, and that has not been met by, I think it's just over 10.
No, I'm sure it's in the 20s now.
I heard it's 14. As in they need 14.
Ah, okay.
And if that's the case, they can get a no vote of confidence.
A vote of no confidence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whiskey's taking its toll on me.
Already, huh?
It always starts with this slurred speech. I'm not sure. I don't know.
What about you?
I'm going to be honest, I missed the start of that. I was checking something on my phone. High quality podcasting right here.
I said, do you think Theresa May will have to face a vote of no confidence?
Yeah.
Is the vote of no confidence just within her party, or is it within Parliament?
Within her party.
Okay.
So it'll be the Conservative Party that will vote on her future, I suppose.
Yeah.
And you think it's likely?
Yeah. Or... I don't think it's unlikely, I think it's better.
That's a very
wishy-washy response,
yes.
I know. But,
well, let me ask you this way then. In what way do you think it cannot happen? What would your reasons for it not happening be?
What's needed for it to... Is it
48.
a majority? Or
48.
48 people need to hand in.
How many Conservatives are eligible to hand in?
Everyone.
I think it's all of them, yeah.
But what's the number of...
Oh, you mean Conservative MPs are sitting in...
I
think it must
be... What's the total potential?
Is it 300 now? I think it is 300 something.
Really?
302, yeah.
See, at that number, it's difficult to...
Because 326 is the majority.
I don't know exactly how it stands with Brexiteers and Remainers within the Conservative Party. However, Moggs supports the vote of no confidence, doesn't he?
I think so.
And he's the sort of leader of the Brexiteers within the Tory party. I find I've got out of 300, again, and I don't know the Tory party numbers specifically.
I'm checking right now.
Yeah, how... They wouldn't achieve that if they only needed 48. I mean, how that vote of no confidence would go is a different matter.
Yeah, 315.
315. Is that with the DUP though?
Including the DUP is 325.
So is it?
Okay, so they made up the remaining 11. Fair enough.
I feel like they could. I don't know how they've
already left.
Have they signed in a...
Well, not signed anything, but they've already made it clear that her deal isn't what they want for Northern Ireland. So they're not particularly happy. I don't know if they've gone as far as signing anything, because that would obviously severely threaten their power base.
If they do.
But here's the thing, right? This sort of thing happened before, and it actually brought about Margaret Thatcher. I don't know if any of you studied politics to the degree, but in the 70s, when the first sort of referendum came around for Scotland, it was the SNP who did a deal with the Conservatives, and it was their vote of no confidence that actually swung the leadership,
which led to
it was with Labour. They were with Labour, and when they were like, no, you fucked our referendum, because there was the Cunningham clause. There was a weird clause in the agreement that they signed for the referendum, which said that if the voter participation wasn't above 36 or 35 or something like that, it wouldn't. It was 40. You're right. It was 40. It would be nullified essentially. So the whole thing, and it was 36% participated. Nobody knew what the question was. The whole thing was just botched.
So even though the other side won, it never went through because there wasn't a high enough participation.
Yes, which is a silly thing.
It's quite clever.
It is clever, but and then they initiated that vote of no confidence, which got rid of I forget his name now, but the current PM at the time,
old Labour man.
Yeah. And then good old Maggie came along.
Yeah.
So it would be
a similar
almost poetic if it sort of
went the other way.
Yeah, now with Ireland, now that's where there's
Do you not think it would be a reverse Glorious Revolution, where the DUP come in and save the Tories rather than the Tories coming across to Ireland and saving...
Kingsmakers?
Yeah.
They already are Kingsmakers.
But that's my point, it's a reverse... You know?
Well,
where King Billy came across to Northern Ireland and saved the Northern Irish. The Northern Irish are coming across and saving the Tories. Bit of a stretch, but I don't know.
It's a bit late for that reference, isn't it? They've been there for about 2 years now, so...
Yeah. But with the vote of no confidence, I don't know.
What do you think of the deal, then?
I still don't know the specifics of it. We're meaning to read up on that, and of course it's the same.
The 558 pages.
85, 86, yeah.
But can you give us a quick outline?
Well, I've obviously not read it. It's a bit long, but
so let's talk about it.
No, but I've read the big parts, the most important parts. So I think essentially, to sum it up, is that if the EU and the British Parliament don't come to an agreement on what the relationship between the two would be post-Brexit, the idea is that they can initiate another phase which will keep them in the EU de facto but take away some of their abilities.
So it's a worse form of membership.
Yeah, it's more of a vassal state.
A vassal state.
A temporary vassal state.
Do you think it would be temporary because there are probably factions within at least the Conservative Party, but also Labour and such, that would prefer that perhaps to leaving?
No, actually, I think the deal so far has been unilaterally rejected.
You don't think
Labour won't pass it, the Tories won't pass it, as far as I can tell right now. All the chief whips are busy collecting votes, I suppose. But yeah, essentially that's what the fuss is about. The fact that the UK would essentially be locked in an agreement where it wouldn't be able to regulate its own trade agreements for a certain amount of time.
It's a shitty Remain and not a Brexit.
It's a Brexit in name only, really. Yeah.
It's not a full English Brexit.
No,
you can say that.
It's not. Yeah, it's more of a
right.
Budget Brexit.
If Theresa May does get ousted, do you think it would be who do you think would replace her? Because I don't think Bojo. I don't think Mogg would take it, but he'd probably be a good choice for a Brexiter. He's probably the member of the Conservative Party establishment I like the most.
I don't think. Here's the thing, right? I don't think anybody could actually negotiate a better deal. Yep. That's the weird thing about Theresa May. Even though I'm not a fan of Tories or conservatism in any sense, she is actually the only
Tory I've actually come to respect.
But I think she's the only one who could have done it so well if you're trying to make both leave and remain happy.
Yeah, but that's what that's what the aim should be.
Maybe, but my
rather
point
than splitting the country further.
If it does come to the case where that is not possible, and we were to go for a full leave candidate, I think Mogg would be a good choice. Even though I doubt
if that was the case, yeah, but I don't think that's the case. I think if anything, it's gonna hold the balance. It's still gonna be in the balance. I still think I don't see the public opinion swinging hard either way at this present moment. I think the whole conversation's been kind of marred by uncertainty, and nobody actually knows what's going on. And even though we know a little bit more now, especially about what was said during the campaigns, and a lot of it being wrong, obviously, and just lies, the whole 370 million or whatever it was on the bus and that sort of shit, that was all the falsehoods, really. I think some people are still so afraid of it, of being tied to Europe in that way, that they will still remain Brexiteers, regardless.
I was going to ask you, do you actually think Mogg would fulfill the role of a leader quite well?
Alright, my opinion, I think so. I like the way he thinks. I would make clear that... what?
Nothing.
What?
I like that he's from the 19th century.
Here's the thing, people like to paint him as this high Tory, sort of straight out of fox hunting poor people from the 1820s, but the thing is, he is more of just a classical liberal. His only view I could call truly conservative is abortion. He's anti-abortion.
Was it you who was telling me about how he would go to his gay friend's wedding?
Yeah,
he wouldn't support it, but
I think he does, from my understanding, he doesn't care about gay marriage being legalized as long as it's not forced upon any particular churches, which is my position anyway.
Also, every church would have the choice.
Yes, it would be legal for the church to just say we're pro-gay marriage, but it couldn't be forced upon any church, which I think is probably the best outcome.
Yeah, fair dues, yeah.
Other than that, he's pretty much an old Whig. He's a liberal.
No, I don't think so.
What issues do you see him as?
Oh, well, I think in general it's the attitude that he has. It's more the fact that if you actually want a good deal, and you don't want like cold fronts between the EU and Britain, do you?
No.
Well, that's why I don't think you should have a hardliner negotiating that. Honestly, the only alternative I can see actually negotiating a post-Brexit deal is Jeremy Corbyn. Because I think now that you've applied the hammer, you need to sort of smoothen it over a bit.
I don't think we've applied the hammer.
You have.
I think that, if anything, in my opinion, I think that our negotiations have been characterised by... I hate to use the word, but cucking. I cringe using that word. I mean, in regards to the deal we've got, at least within the transitory period, is like you said, a vassal sort of remain state.
Mm-hmm.
I think and I was discussing this with my former politics teacher from high school. He thought that a good way to negotiate was to sort of just give them some stuff, show goodwill. But I think through doing that, we've shown our cards, and I think that perhaps if we were to reverse that, bring in maybe Mogg, I doubt he'd take it.
Here's the thing, though. I think
we could get a harder stance for arguing our point, for getting a better deal.
But people vastly overestimate the power of the EU legislative. It doesn't actually control much. The only thing it can do is recommendations, and it can give you certain quotas to fulfill over a certain time period.
But I think
you're a far cry away from seeing from what's going to happen to Greece.
No, I think it. Well, I would say it's perhaps more of a debate between who needs who.
I don't think so. I don't think it's a question of need.
It has to make sure strategically that Britain doesn't get a good deal because they don't want other states to leave. However, at the same time, Britain's economy is strong, and for example, Germany does rely on it quite heavily.
Mm-hmm.
I think both sides almost underestimates and overestimates how much the other side needs each other.
Yeah, of course, but that's just I don't think they do that behind closed doors. I think they just do that. It's a bit of saber rattling. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know if
they do that in the media to.
I don't know if it's maybe because
discourage each other from crossing a point of no return.
I'll lay my bias is clear. I'm pro leaving the EU. Would you say that? Because in my opinion, I would say that the EU has had the upper hand in negotiations. As someone who I presume is more pro Remain, who would you say has had the upper hand in your observations?
Yes, I agree with you there. I think out of those two entities, it's the strain definitely lies on Britain.
So I don't want to let my the Germans are coming for us paranoia to take over. I mean, I want
No, but the problem I have with the whole thing is that I'm definitely not anti-EU. But the way it exists right now, it doesn't know what it is.
Yes.
And it's not been able to figure out what it is, which is probably the core of the whole issue, really.
I think also a difference between us is that you see the EU heading, at least from what you said to me, I understand that you see the EU heading towards more of a confederacy, whereas I see it heading towards more of a federal state. The difference being centralization.
It's not even confederacy is what I see happening. I think that's what I want to happen.
Yeah, which I empathise with, by the way.
Yeah, I think if you break down all the different states, really, and relocate the power at the local level, at least for the things where they matter, like agriculture and roads and some of the taxation laws, like there's no need for a centralised government to interfere, really. Because you're not going to be able to tell the local farmer what to do and how to do his job properly if he's been doing that job for 40 years. If you give them regulations that they have to abide by within a certain time, let's say to get rid of all emission, car-based emission of plastics, that's different. But, generally, I think...
Does that actually happen right now, though?
Yeah.
To what extent?
Well, that's what I mean. They can't give you direct laws, but they can express recommendations that are agreed upon by the leaders, the European leaders, the heads of state, that the country will have to keep. No, I'm okay. I've still got some within a certain time frame. That's about the fullest extent of the EU power it has. It's not a regulator. It's not it is a legislative body, but in name only, really. The powers it has are actually quite limited. And the interesting thing about the human rights courts and all that is that, as good as it is in principle, if you actually ever do end up having a case that you want to take through, it will take you 8 years, easily, to actually get a hearing, and then it will be most likely thrown out. That's the track record. Anyways.
Examples of that?
Well, I think there was I don't right now, but there's loads of cases that you can look up where it took them forever, because they get obviously it's one court system that takes care of all of the EU.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have 500 million people, or be responsible for 500 million people, and if you just have, it's not gonna work out mathematically that they're going to be able to process any of those requests in a speedy manner.
Yeah.
Louis, what was actually, don't know precisely your stance on the EU and such?
I was pro-Remain. I still don't feel I ever looked into it enough, to be honest. I don't think anyone really could properly grasp the full extent of everything that was happening, which I think that sort of feeling of being overwhelmed by it kind of put me off a bit, I guess, which is the wrong attitude, I know.
Understandable, though.
Yeah.
Like, I get that. I mean, I think another problem is that
too many conflicting narratives.
Well, perhaps I picked my side too early. and by that I'm not saying that I don't think I should be supporting Brexit. I mean that for quite a few years now, even before the talk of Brexit, far before then, I've been quite anti-EU. But I don't trust my younger self with that sort of being able to properly analyse things. So I worry that
you were too hasty.
I've picked my side and dug myself in, and it's and I do have sympathies with the EU as a project. I don't know, and I'm not saying I revoke my stance for leaving the EU. I just worry that I've dug myself in too early, and now I can't tell what's confirmation bias and what's my actual belief. Because unlike you, I do believe in the nation state.
No, I do too. I've never disputed the nation state.
We've disputed whether it's dead, or at least dying.
I think the cultural foundation of it is in peril.
Peril, yes. I just disagree.
And I think I think in the long run it's dead.
Okay.
I don't think it's dying right now. Or
when you say the long run, what do you have a specific time? Well, I mean, probably say that by
no. Okay. I don't think anybody does, and I hate. I won't make any predictions like that. You'll never hear me say making any predictions like that. That's just silly. I think it's futile guessing. But I was actually listening to. I was telling you this morning, listening to the Grand Inquisitor, on the way here. And The Grand Inquisitor. It's a book by Fyodor Dostoevsky.
It's all on Spotify, the audiobook.
It's really good. It's really, really good. It's actually an excerpt of the Brothers Karamazov. It's actually a fiction written within a fiction. It's really cool. And it was so good that it was just taken out and it served as its own thing. But essentially the premise is they both sit in a pub or something and they have a conversation, and the older brother, says, right, I wrote this little poem thing, and it's essentially what it is God returns to Inquisition or Spain during the Inquisition, and he doesn't talk a single word. He just wanders around and looks at people, and then he gets arrested by the Inquisitor and locked up, and they have a heart to heart, or the Inquisitor spills out exactly his motivations and what he thinks, and it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. I can't regurgitate it because I've only just read it. But one of the aspects of it was, I completely forgot what we were talking about right now. What was it we were talking about?
Was it to do with leaving the EU and confirmation bias and Louis' point?
What was your point?
I can't remember.
Oh, what the fuck? This is embarrassing.
We just vegetated.
Yeah, but I just...
no, wait. I think I was making the point that I was scared to even start.
Oh no, you said you were afraid that you dug yourself in.
Yes.
One point of view.
Yes. I was saying that.
Yes.
About the side of Brexit.
Yeah. And then I forgot what.
Wait, no, but I'm vaguely aware of the story of the Inquisitor. Basically, the Inquisitor is fighting on the side of the Catholic Church, but it's to do with the institutional dogma, not the actual true message. Not
really at all. Actually, it's weird. On the surface, it seems like that, but it's not that at all. It's more about the separation of powers, really.
No, but I assume
and how it would be seen by God, and how that sort of influences the Inquisitor's decision making. And one of the interesting things he says is that after he says, "Go back, we don't need you." He says that to God. He's like, yes, he says that we don't need you. We have not needed you for 700 years. It is us who are in charge now, and we are the ones who express our freedoms in the service of the many, because the many don't want freedom. In fact, the many will lap or leap at any chance, or will follow anyone who gives them a chance to quiet their conscience. And that was quite a deep insight, or the way it was said. It was really quite powerful. I was like, that's an interesting point of view. because I never thought about it like that. But it's sort of true. We always look for someone to look up to, like no matter what.
Quickly filled me in.
You should read it. It's a very short book. It's a very short book. It's really, really good.
Well, you listened to it from your journey to uni today,
yeah, and
almost entirely.
I've got 2 parts left to listen to.
Fair.
They're like 10 minutes each.
It's on Spotify. I'm gonna download it tonight. I'll give it a
listen.
Maybe next episode we could discuss
it. Maybe it's not actually because it's in German.
But it could still be.
I'm sure it will be.
I'm sure if it exists in German, it'll exist in English.
It's one of those ones that...
Is it the Grand Inquisitor or just the Inquisitor?
Grand Inquisitor.
The Grand Inquisitor. I suppose we've discussed this to a point where, because we didn't fill Louis in, it's sort of difficult to backtrack.
Yeah, but I think that fear that you might have dug yourself in and sort of maybe heaped some of the falsehoods that were,
just metal music.
You know, maybe spread around during that time, that you've sort of taken them on. That's something we've all got to be careful of, regardless of what side we stand on.
I mean, I look back on my posts, I've since deleted them all. Yeah, Facebook has this feature, by the way, if you're listening, you might want to know that you can look back on what you posted this day a few years ago or a year ago.
Yeah.
And I went back, and in 2014 I was just on like Better Together and all that, sharing all of their like clickbait memes or soundbite memes. And I look back and I don't like that form of debating. I detest it, but I don't disagree with the original premise. Yeah. Whilst I might hate the points they're making. Is it
the premise you disagree with or the sentiment?
It's the sentiment, because the premise of remaining in the United Kingdom I believe in. However, the way they're arguing it and the points they're making I do not necessarily still agree with. Or at least the way they're making, definitely.
The fear-mongering.
Also just the soundbite. I hate the idea you can condense a good point into one meme or one tweet.
Yeah.
It's just... I don't like it, and
I don't like it either.
It's also because I see my 14-year-old self in that, and I cringe.
Yeah, that's normal though. I think.
I know.
It's interesting that you were that engaged in it, even though you couldn't have voted.
I don't know. I seem to have, for quite a long time, I would just pick a new fad where I would focus all of my attention on.
Really? Never noticed.
Hey, he's opening up. Give him a chance.
What I mean is that I can remember I did a project on Russian history when I was in primary 7, and I became obsessed with Russia for a straight year, trying to just learn everything. And then I did that, but I became known as Russian kid, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be known as that. So I was like, oh, well, I'll learn about British history then. So, but because of that, I made Britain my god. And so when I was 14 and the referendum was coming about, I hadn't looked at it like, right, here are the two sides, I'll make my decision. It was blind loyalty
to a cause.
Yeah, I was looking at it in regards to just two factions fighting. I didn't necessarily see the yes side as wrong. I can remember having a thought.
That is what it boils down to, though.
But I can remember having a specific thought where I said to one of my friends who was pro yes, it's just a matter of where our loyalties lie. I was seeing it purely as a matter of what group to adhere to.
But I think that's what most people will see.
Yeah.
In fact, the overwhelming... That's what... I think there's only so much you can discuss before everything sort of stripped bare and facts no longer matter, and it just turns into a battle, if you will. Like a proper battle. There's literally no other word I could use to describe it. It's the only difference between us now and 500 years back is that we don't resort to physical violence to resolve it.
Just result name calling instead.
Name calling, public shaming. It's more sophisticated, so we say or think, but it's
more abstract.
More abstract for sure.
More of a pretense.
It's more. Yeah.
And also, I'd like to make another point that with regards to where your loyalties lie, I'm not saying that has no merit whatsoever. There's still an element of that within me. It's just that shouldn't be your... I don't know whether it shouldn't be your primary factor.
It shouldn't inform your political opinions, really, or grand decisions like that. I think stuff like that should be evidence-based, especially if it's turned to the people, which wasn't a good idea. to begin with.
Are you against referenda?
Generally, no, but in instances like this, yes.
How would you resolve the issue of Scottish independence without a referendum?
That's in that instance, I would agree. But I mean, Brexit.
Would you prefer a government was voted who said they were going to leave the EU? Was voted in?
Yes, I think so. But that would require less PR management of politics. I think that's the big problem that we face now, is that pretty much all of our politicians have become PR people for big companies and interest groups that we don't have any insight to. And if we don't understand what the motivations behind all this thing is, like even the Brexit voters, a lot of the Brexiteers only did what they did to either attract attention or to play some sort of crude joke. Not a lot of them actually have the backbone to stand by what they think.
What do you mean?
Like a lot of the official people who came out to support Brexit.
Oh, you mean the people? All right, I thought you meant the average Joe.
No. Right, I mean like elected representatives.
Right.
A lot of them were like, like even Nigel Farage, when the vote was still being counted, they were convinced it wasn't going to win. It wasn't going to go through.
But that's not to do with him not supporting it. That's not to do with it not expecting it.
But yes, that's crucial though.
But I think it's better that he just not expect it than not actually support it, because one is sincere and the other is insincere.
I don't know.
Because I didn't expect to leave the EU. I mean, I can remember the day before, being like, if this doesn't, because I had to think like, if we don't leave, what am I going to support? And I think I can remember vowing to myself of reform within the EU. Yeah. However, I just lost the point I was making. Well, that was the thing, yes. But although I didn't expect to win, I still held my values as wanting to win. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Whereas the difference between Farage and maybe, let's say, Boris Johnson, not that I'm accusing anyone, would be that one, he was more predicting who was going to win, I think. Instead of...
I don't know. To me, it seemed more like he wanted to be the guy who was always on the contrary point of view. Like he'll even disagree with all the people that are in office now who are trying to negotiate a tangible Brexit. He will just completely write over what they are doing. He's a contrarian by nature, a populist really, who goes against the current stream of the narrative.
Do you think it's important to have people like that though?
Of course it is. I'm not saying it isn't, but if those dudes start to get a hold of power, it's a different matter entirely. Or if their ideas become entrenched in...
What ideas? The ideas of just going against the establishment, or the ideas of...
That doesn't really work if you are the establishment, does it?
Well, it depends if we're assuming that the sort of populist...
No, there's nothing wrong with being anti-establishment, because most of that is founded in a sort of reformist idea, right? It's not that, hey, let's just destroy everything and start again. It's more, let's make it better, yeah. Right? Let's repair and fix what's broken. That's totally fine. That's totally legitimate, and that's more the side I would be on, anyways.
I think also a point when you're saying about those people coming into power, if we remove Boris Johnson, is that most people who are sort of populists do have a vision that's not just let's be against this sort of current status. So when they do come into power, they have their ideas, and then there's the people to go against them.
Yeah, but most of their arguments are founded on things that aren't there.
What do you mean?
Like Nigel Farage and people like Boris Johnson will ground their arguments on the basis of something not being there, or something being, let's say, broken beyond the point of return.
The EU being broken.
Yeah. It's a flawed system to begin with, where you shouldn't have been in there in the first place, etc., etc. It's broken, you can't fix it. We need to do our own thing. This is for the common working man, blah, blah, blah.
What's your issue with that?
The issue with that is that rather than focusing on what people are doing well and encouraging that, you're focusing on what people are not doing well, and even though it disguises itself as a rational argument, it's informed by fear. And fear is never a good metric by which to create or.
But he's not looking at it from the institution of the European Union. He's looking at it from the institution of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So he's reforming the United Kingdom in that argument because it's through their membership. You know
No. But even when it comes to internal matters or like immigration and stuff like that, it's always a fear-based argument that he will employ. It's never something that is grounded in a real statistic or real.
Well, taking immigration for example, I disagree with that point.
Well, like all the Romanians and Bulgarians that have come flooding into the country.
No, it's to do
all
with
6 of them.
It's to do with suppression of wages through.
I get that. Yeah,
it's to do with culture clashes. These are real, tangible things.
I don't know where those culture clashes are coming from. They're not coming from other EU countries, so.
Sometimes not.
Most, like in no cases. When have you ever seen Polish and Scottish people clash?
Mm.
Well, there is more. Poland, I think, is a bad example because it is vastly becoming very similar to other Western European countries.
Have you seen what's going on right now?
I would say culturally, they're far more involved in, let's say, Romania, Bulgaria, etc.
Yeah, okay.
So I think it's a bad example to use Polish.
Right, okay, Romania and Bulgaria then. There's no culture clash there. They do the work that Brits don't want to do.
Look, it's not a matter of...
And those jobs
Romania
are going to be...
such and such. It's a matter of when you have people on such a scale coming in,
but
there will be a cultural clash because by the nature of them being different cultures.
Yeah, sure. You can, but the numbers that are cited by these figures are often grossly exaggerated.
I think the problem is that
he was making a case that there would be 20,000 people coming in daily to come in here and work, whilst there would be like one guy from Britain going to Spain.
My point is that I think there's also a problem that we're both talking in vagaries, which is
of course, but like I said, we should really have something here to
so it's like
fact check.
Yeah,
so that we can both get shut up.
I'm just worried that perhaps we'll both end up just spouting these sort of sound bites, and through that we'll just kind of go off on one and each be separate.
But we're already past the 10-minute mark, so nobody has listened beyond this point. Thanks, YouTube demographics.
I stopped listening about 5 minutes ago, I'll be honest.
Right, movies.
Alright, give us a subject you want to talk about. What do you want to talk about? Does anything come to your mind? Come on, give us something. Nothing. There's nothing you want to talk about.
I don't think I've told you this.
What's angering you at the minute? What's making you happy? What are you finding interesting? Anything? What did you last watch on YouTube?
Right, let's go check. If it's something embarrassing, I'll say something else. Should we fill this space, or should I just...
I just want...
The last thing I watched was a video called How It's Actually Made Bacon, except it wasn't actually about how bacon's made.
It was like about how tragically evil the farmers are.
It was like footage of how bacon's made, but with like some guy speaking over it, describing a completely different procedure, like about dog meat and stuff that looked like it could be what was happening. But it wasn't. I think as a sort of parody of the sort of vegan, where it like dramatizes these clips, and like
you don't like vegans, do you?
I don't dislike vegans. I don't know it's the healthiest diet. I know a lot of people disagree with it. I also don't.
Did you say it is?
I don't think it is. I think vegetarianism.
I don't think it is at all. It's been proven that it's not.
Can you give your opinion on vegetarianism being unhealthy?
I don't think it's unhealthy.
I think vegetarianism
was a dream.
Didn't
you once told me it was a dream, or is that just veganism?
Veganism is unhealthy. It's been proven that it's unhealthy. If you actually stick to a proper vegan diet, you will have to take all sorts of vitamin supplements and pills to make up for the nutritional loss of not eating animal products. That's documented. That's why most people can't do it. Because they start getting shaky.
I think it also, like, I've heard a lot of vegans talk about sort of the diet of non-vegans and also the lifestyle of non-vegans, and like criticize the fact they do exercise.
What's that?
Like, I can't remember who it was. I was just once listening to something. They were like saying, "Oh, you eat steaks, what? So you can go on all your hill walks and stuff." And it was just like, "What are you chatting about?" You're like criticizing the fact that the food gives you energy to do exercise. Like, what do you mean?
To be a functioning human being.
Wait, I shouldn't be hunched over and have my eyeballs falling out of my socket?
Have grey bags under those eyes.
That's what I mean, though. Some of these dudes look like skeletons.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. Remember, we talked to those people in the street for that Vox Pop thing, and some of them had tried the vegan diet. It was about the calorie deficit thing.
Barely any of them could.
Yeah, those people who tried it said it's unsustainable. And then we met those two biology students who were like, killing.
It's no different killing an insect to killing a cow. And I was like, I'm not going to listen to you. This doesn't. Like, I can completely understand the moral side of it. I think the way some animals are treated is horrific.
But that can be changed to better, for more ethical farming.
Yeah, but that, again, I think the best way to really do it is hunting.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before.
Have meat.
Is that sustainable really for society to
It isn't, but
there's a reason.
Well, it depends. It depends how often you eat meat. If you're going to eat meat every day and you have to have a fucking grass-fed beef steak every day, then no. But if you eat it like our ancestors would, which is like once a week or something, it would be sustainable.
It doesn't need to be grass-fed to be treated well, though.
I mean,
no, I think it should be.
I think it should be.
Yeah.
I think if you're keeping any animal locked in a box,
I'm not
regardless of the size of the box.
But that's what you would need to do. You'd have to get rid of the factory aspect of it. Those concentration camp like farms where they just kill thousands a day.
I think it's like the ones in Denmark where they literally put food in one end, like literally just put food in one end, and the machine inside breeds the pigs. It takes the cat, like they grow inside a machine. Food goes in one end and meat comes out the other side.
Yeah.
That's grim.
It's horrible, yeah. And I obviously oppose that, but I don't think...
And I mean, we're lucky here in Scotland because all of our cows are grass-fed.
Yeah.
Lucky, really lucky.
But we can do that. I mean, we have a declining population, and that
it's not that, though. It's the fact that Scotland has way more land available than any other place.
Right, but what I mean is that, for example, if we look at India, massive country,
but India's not going to eat beef, is it?
China. I'm taking an example of a large country,
because
it's got such large city populations, that which will naturally decline, which will be consuming a lot of meat. In the future, that will be more possible to have these better cared for animals.
What if the population dies down?
Yeah, which it will. It seems
is this like Agenda 22 bullshit?
No.
Let's reduce the population to 500 million so that everyone can drive a tank.
I mean that because population studies is a
but it's
subject.
But it's an etymological subject where people sit there and stare at statistics and try to establish a causal relationship, and that's by definition only reliable about 50% of the time.
Why?
Because it is. It's just there's a gazillion factors that can play into trends that will change them indefinitely.
Okay, but a large factor seems to be development, that people have less
children.
And I'm not
yes, true, absolutely, and that's a documented one that has been traceable for since the industrial age. I get that totally, but in a time where technology is progressing so fast at a scale that we're completely eliminated from that process. By the way, most inventions that happen nowadays are, or let's say, technological computer advances, coding advances happen, but at the hand of machines and algorithms that we don't actually know
or can't comprehend.
So in times like that, it's impossible to say it will just stay like that.
Right, but we can say that it seems to indicate that this is the case. From what we can see so far, I mean, even Catholic Ireland still has a population birth rate below replacement.
What? I thought it was 3.5.
No, it's. I mean, I'll quickly keep talking.
I'm pretty sure it was.
I'll look up the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah, I'm sure their birth rate was 3.5%.
And the UK's is rising, but that's only through immigration. Birth rate. 1.92.
Really,
2
just look that up,
is the number needed to maintain a steady population.
I know
that does make sense.
So 1.92. Even Catholic Ireland is below that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it seems to just hold itself up because that's just below representation.
But that's one of the highest in Europe.
Really?
Yeah. The lowest is Italy, I think, or Germany.
Where is it where they're like playing those ads to try and get people?
I think that's Italy.
Sweden,
I thought. Yeah, I thought it was Scandinavian countries.
And bearing in mind, Italy's is 1.35. Bearing in mind, this is bolstered up by immigration because immigrants tend to have larger families. So it does seem
lowest is
Spain's 1.33. Germany's is quite low. Birth rate.
And what's your concern of what that'll lead to, or what do you actually think?
Well, my point being is that it appears to be that development in a country leads to lower birth rates because people don't need to have lots of kids to look after them. It tends to create a more liberal society where people aren't focused on these sort of traditional values that are there for reasons like that. You know, I think
So the EU average is 1.6.
Which, again, I would make the point is bolstered up by immigration, so it could
Germany's
be lower.
is just like 1.5, so that's alright, I guess. France has got the highest with just below 2. Followed by Sweden, Ireland, and the UK.
And the other thing I'll say is, you're saying about culturally what this will lead to. We don't know. Because this is...
Wondering the rate at which it's happening right now. It has started slowing down.
I predict, China's is slowing down quite heavily.
Well, the world population's slowing down.
Yeah, but China, which used to have a massive problem through their development and many other factors, has slowed down. I don't know about India, but
I think India is pretty much still uncontrolled.
Shall we?
What?
Shall we cut this off since we're not?
No, we're talking. Are we not?
We are talking.
Sure, it's just a bit slower.
Yeah,
that's
but we're actually
using numbers
checking. Yeah, so this is all right. So these are the birth growth percentages. So the overall is still 2.2% growth.
Right, but that is mainly through immigration.
Not necessarily.
Considering that Germans are having less children than are dying.
Yeah, I suppose.
So it's primarily bolstered, especially in the United Kingdom, that's primarily the case.
But it's migration, not immigration.
I'm sorry?
It's migration, not immigration. So that's a different thing. So
immigrant families tend to have far more births.
Migrant families. So what is happening essentially is that you get people from other parts of Europe coming to the UK, having kids here, settling here, and then who knows what's going to happen. So
not necessarily Europe.
That's what migration is, though.
Out of Europe. I can only talk from the United Kingdom.
But that's what it accounts for as migration. It's not immigration. So you still have a population growth, but the people that would naturally be in their home country have moved to other European countries, which isn't a bad thing. It's just inter-European mingling, I suppose.
But it's not just that, is my point, with Italy having a birth rate of 1.32.
But if they get, for whatever reason, let's say 10 million Swiss immigrants every year, that's just hyperbolic, obviously. Fucking hell, Malta, 32%. What?
What's that? Sorry.
Malta has a population growth of 32%.
I wonder where that's from.
It might be. Wait, is it
migration?
Migration.
What's their total fertility?
32%.
No. Sorry, the total fertility is the one on the far right.
Fertility rate.
So 1.37. That's Italy levels.
This is an interesting.
So their increase in population is entirely through either migration or immigration.
Migration. It's only accounting for migration. So
that's flawed, isn't it? Then
it's not. It's just saying. This is what it's saying here. These are all people from within the union. Internal migration. So that's okay. It's not even an issue at all.
Well, again, I can only speak for.
But even
two factors.
It's also accounting for Britain in that way.
Yeah. But you've also got to account for the migrant crisis within, for example, Germany, but also the massive amounts of non-EU immigration into the UK.
But that's not that big a deal. It's actually much harder to get into Europe if you're from outside it, unless you're American or Australian.
There's less Europeans.
What?
For example, may I keep speaking, please?
I don't know. You were about to make a point, so I can't really address it.
Well, I can discuss this interesting graph I found here, which is showing the worldwide.
Oh, Nigeria is huge.
Well, it's also that Britain or Europe hasn't actually changed that much in the last 50 years. The only countries that actually has is in East
See,
Asia,
that's what I mean.
South
It's
Asia.
the same amount of people, but they're just having kids in different EU countries.
If we actually, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No,
because the number stays. Yeah,
that's what I was about to say.
The number stays the same. They're just having the same Europeans have kids in different
If the
EU
majority
countries.
of EU countries have a birth rate below 2,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter if we're migrating between countries because
it should still decline then. My point is that it's bolstered by immigration from outside of the EU. Because even if people are just moving between each other, it would still decline because of the low birth rate.
But the overall isn't declining.
Right, it's staying the same. Regardless of the fact that EU countries are having...
But you don't want a surplus, you don't want excess population.
You'd ideally want 2.
No.
Yeah,
we want it to go down at the moment, I think.
No, because then you have things like a declining economy.
Not really. They were actually just saying that it
shrinks.
No, because you have inter-union...
I'm agreeing with you. My point is that it's being bolstered up by non-EU immigration. Here's the thing. Because I'm not saying that that's not a factor.
We've said that.
What?
If the population is rising and the EU on a whole has a birth rate below 2, that means it's being bolstered by immigration.
By non-EU immigration.
That's just
But that's 0.2%. That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's quite a lot.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
That's normal. That's always been like that.
And also, that's just from immigration. It's also, that sort of numbers doesn't take into account when these immigrant families are already in the country having lots of children.
No, but then they would be counted into that figure.
Yes.
Why is
that's
that a problem?
What I'm saying.
That doesn't. Then they're
is
not
that still
immigrants
bolstered
anymore.
Through immigration?
No.
Because as soon as they become citizens...
That is part of the statistics.
They're naturalised citizens, yeah.
Right, that's my point. Is it still technically from the outside because they're coming from the outside, having families, having many children?
It's always been like that, though.
I'm not saying it's not. That's what I'm...
I don't understand the issue, though.
There's no issue. I'm just saying that's what...
Right,
that's what I'm trying to make
all
clear.
You're saying. Yeah, okay.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
I get you, but...
That's literally all the point I'm trying to make.
Right, cool.
Okay. But do you have an issue with it? Or
I'm just saying that's Germany's population, let's say technically, or Britain's, I'll take Britain's because I know better, is still technically being bolstered by immigration from outside of the EU.
Yeah, but again, that sounds like one of those snappy little right-wing sound bites.
Forget left or right or
anything. I know. That's what you're not trying to say, but it sounds like one of those articles you pick up on Facebook.
Yeah, it really does.
No. Look, I
get what you're coming from, and I know there's no ill will maybe intended in that statement. But just for reference, if you're going to make that point for whatever reason, it sounds like You're portraying it as a negative thing, even though it's always been like that.
The reason I was making that was because I felt like you were attributing too much to migration from within the EU.
No, but you were saying that all of it accounts for migration. It doesn't.
No, because there still is people having births, but
you said all of it.
Well, then I take that back.
Okay, that's fine then. We're all good. We're all fair and square. Even Stephen. Running out of puns.
For a guy who only has National 4 Maths, I enjoyed that numbers debate.
We should probably not have this debate then, if we're all like just shit at maths.
Oh, I'm awful.
What's level 4?
Right.
National 4 is below. It's below the actually recognised level.
You don't get like.
Is that intermediate 1 or 2?
There's no exam.
There's no exam.
It would be
and you're not given a grade.
I think. It's foundation.
Really?
It's foundation.
How the fuck did you get away with that?
Because you don't need it for journalism.
Wait,
I'm probably going
to.
No, but did you not? Were you not forced to take it?
No,
you just have to do that for.
I'll probably take a night course because I should know it, but I'm just so bad at maths.
Well, you should probably do it in an applied way then.
What do you mean?
Like if you're gonna do maths,
don't
do
pure maths.
Don't do like a maths. Do like a psychometric course or something. Yeah. That's statistics.
Right.
For psychology. But there's loads of stuff you can do. One thing that's always worth knowing is standard deviation.
Okay.
That's probably the most useful one, especially in what we're doing. Because that will help you understand what these numbers are. Because, overall, it might sound. It makes for an interesting soundbite. Oh, it accounts for blah blah blah. This accounts for migration, blah blah blah. But it's not saying anything really. It's always been like that for the last 50 years, as you just said.
Yeah, in the scale of 50 years.
Yeah. So, but even before that, I imagine it wouldn't have been much different.
No, I think you can.
What with British people were importing Indians? Come on.
It was at a far lower rate.
Nah.
Well,
and look, hey, I'm pro Windrush. I'm not
disputing. No. I'm not disputing your intentions or what you mean. Blah blah blah. I'm just saying. I think it's vastly overblown.
I just wanted to make clear. Well, it's like when you're saying it's always been like that. I wanted to make clear that this is more of a modern phenomenon.
What is? Sorry.
This scale of population being bolstered by immigration. Because we've only had a declining...
I think the frequency of movement is a modern phenomenon, but the bolstering by immigration isn't. Because you've always had people coming in from Africa, North Africa,
yes, and however,
Arabia and
Britain had
Turkey and
a population birth rate above replacement, to my knowledge, before World War I, that was above 2.0.
Yeah, but it also had cholera fucking outbreaks, and it
so
couldn't figure out
the actual levels of growth by.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, back then it couldn't figure. Back then, Britain was a second world country. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, it was a lot higher than what it is now.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying is unnatural. It's a natural.
It seems to be a natural phenomenon that as soon as society progresses into the industrial or post-industrial age, that the birth rate declines. Not declines, but slows.
It's not slowed that much, really. If you're saying it's gone from what did you say, 2.2?
I don't know. No, I said above 2. I didn't say a specific number.
To 1.9.
No. Because I didn't say it was 2. I said it was above 2. It could have been 4. It could have been 5. I don't know.
Well, I can find out for you.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
But if you think about the European history, just any given time, even about British history, everything was written by migrants and immigrants.
What do you mean?
Well, it was the Germanic tribes that invaded the Central European plains. It was the Angles, the Saxons, the Vikings that came here. It's, the Romans came here. It's a keystone of European history. It's a keystone of any history. I mean, if you look at Russia has 36 different ethnicities. China has probably about the same.
I'm not.
India has probably about the same.
But I want to hear the.
Just before you do,
it's actually gone up.
Before
in the
you do,
years.
I would just like to make clear, I'm not
in Britain.
But again, that's because of, for example, immigrants from Islamic families tend to have larger families.
Do you know
that's
more
traditional?
Do you know that's why that's the case?
Because
do you have proof that's the case?
What?
That because we've had migrants coming in. That's
it's
why.
It's not the factor; it's a factor.
But have you read that somewhere? Or is that just something you've thought?
What do you mean?
Where's that idea come from that you think that's the case?
It's recorded.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Do you have? Yeah.
And no, but I'm not. Look, I feel like you're attributing when I say that people from Islamic backgrounds have larger families as a negative. It's
I'm more
because
saying,
it's a more.
I'm more asking.
No, he's more asking. Do you know for a fact that is
what's
the leading cause for the increase in birth rate?
Yeah. Or is
I
that
didn't
just
say
is that
leading
just
cause. I didn't.
But you say is that just speculative? You did just say it was.
Well, then if it did, then I take it back. But I don't think I did.
Because I asked why that happened, and you said.
I said that's a factor. That's important. It's a factor, not the factor. What I was saying is that birth rates have been bolstered by immigration. I don't say it's the factor. It's a factor.
Just look up what the actual factors are.
All right. Okay.
Birth rates by ethnicity.
British. Yeah.
Birth rates by ethnicity would get you that. Birth rates by ethnicity, UK.
Like parents of country of birth.
I'm on the same one.
Official national. Right. Okay. For context, listeners, we're looking it up. What should I quick look on?
Let's see. It has increased. You're right, but that's just will be to do with.
Poland and Pakistan remain. Should I click on that? We can edit this part out, I suppose.
No. This is part of it.
Yeah. I don't think people will be bothered by a few seconds of silence.
Born outside the UK, so that's pretty high.
Can you say that for the camera? I'm not sure exactly.
Over a quarter of live births in England and Wales in 2016 were to women born outside the UK, the highest level on record. So fair enough. Despite a 0.2 decrease in the number of live births between blah blah blah, live births to women born outside is increased by 2.1%. That doesn't account for interracial.
Yeah.
No.
So.
Yeah.
So it's Poland that's the most common.
I was going to say that.
Poland has been the. Do you want me to read these two out?
Yeah.
Poland has been the most common country of birth for mothers born outside of the UK since 2010. Pakistan has been the most common country of birth for fathers born outside the UK since figures were produced in 2008. So it seems that a part of both of our arguments seem to be the case. Poland being in the EU, Pakistan being out with.
I'd still love to just have a graph of births by every ethnicity.
Yeah.
Because if it's saying a quarter, that doesn't surprise me, because that's the same as my dad coming over here or Max being over here. But I mean,
the problem also with judging it by ethnicity, and not to get bogged down in the specifics, is that if you're a second generation Pakistani, you can be ethnically British.
And I think you should be counted.
Yeah. I agree. But that's my point.
Even in statistics, it doesn't matter anymore.
But that's where it becomes grey with our debate.
I don't know if it does.
Because are we debating that it's just first generation immigrants bolstering the population, or is it second or third? You know what I mean? And I agree with you. I think that.
I mean, if it was second generation, it wouldn't be an issue, because we were talking in recent history, and the time period we described here wouldn't give enough room for someone to be born here, grow up, and have kids. I don't think.
Well, let's say recent history is post World War II, because we sent our men to die. Okay. We've had a population decline.
So there's a couple generations then.
I'd say two. Let's say 2 or 3.
2 or 3
because
generations.
I'd say with countries coming from traditional backgrounds, they're more likely to have children young. So let's give room for 2 or 3.
Fair.
After even 2, but especially 3, if the integration goes well, and I would say with early immigration, in many cases it did, it becomes blurry with regards to whether they're ethnically British or ethnically what racially they are, and that makes the debate more difficult.
I think
you know what I mean?
It's only complicated in this situation because of the complicated conversation we're having. In general, I would I think as soon as you've been born in this country, you're from this country, in my mind.
Yes. I would argue that culture is what matters, though. In that you can have a fragmented society. Let's say I can't think of a good example, but I would say that it's integration and culture that what matters, because you're valuing what people act as, which is really what you care about.
Say that again?
Right? I would say so let's say, to oversimplify things, you've got civic nationalism, cultural nationalism, ethnic nationalism.
Don't go into that. Well, the point you made earlier was actually a good one.
What?
You're saying it's the way people act that defines their status in society, not
their what they're born as.
Yes.
Well, race, I would say, because ethnicity is more culture.
No.
Ethnicity is a mix of race and culture, which is why it's a blurry statement.
I think it's more accurate than race, because race isn't really I think I'd like to measure people on.
No.
Necessarily. But I get what you're saying.
Because the reason I'm saying that is because ethnicity is also measured by culture. It grays it a bit.
Right, I suppose. Only in Jewish cases, though, right? In Pakistani.
Not necessarily.
Because Pakistanis...
Brits living in Hong Kong.
Are they an ethnicity, though? They're just white people.
But they're also, I would say they're also Hong Kongers, no?
Yeah, of course, but
that grays it a bit, would you not say?
Well, I don't know. It depends what they're there for, I suppose.
Hell, Germans in Malaysia.
There's not that many, though.
You get my point. If what you were saying earlier about migration being a fundamental of humanity.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I don't know what you
were saying about my
point.
No,
I was just saying that's a fair point, but...
You were saying don't get into nationalism because I made a good point, but you didn't say what point I made.
No, it's more that you're starting to divide the conversation by bringing in more labels for people to remember.
Well, the reason I was doing that was because it seemed... Well, because me and Louis seemed to get into that discussion. We were saying what matters. And I think civic, cultural and ethnic nationalism is about that. And what I was saying, basically...
So what are your apprehensions, then?
What apprehensions?
With regards to people coming into this country. Do you think a declining birth rate is such a... Because you keep talking about it. Mm-hmm. Why is it such a big thing for
Well,
you?
the thing with
why do you want more Brits on this island?
Well, the thing with a declining birth rate is that it creates a declining economy because you have less people.
Yeah, but it hasn't so far, has it? Our economy
because we've had immigration.
I don't think that's the sole cause.
To clarify, I'm not saying whether that's good or bad.
What about automation? You don't need...
that's a factor too.
Yeah, a big one. Bigger.
Yeah, very. Yeah, and I think it will become a bigger factor in the future.
Absolutely.
When you say apprehensions, I mean, there's problems with... If you look at... We've had a lot of successes with immigration. Britain in particular, I'd say, as a European example. However, if you have it on certain scales, on certain mass scales, you can have it so that there is a culture clash. So let's say you have immigration focused heavily in one area instead of being spread out evenly over a long course of time. You can have a drastic change that humans just aren't capable of processing, if you know what I mean.
What example would you point towards then where that was the case?
London, I would say, has been quite transformed. Birmingham.
In what way? What evidence would you point towards that indicates that?
Well, there are towns that I would say 70 years ago would be culturally heavily British that have changed.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't strike me as a negative.
I'm not saying it's a negative or positive. I'm saying it can cause issues. I mean, hell...
What would those issues
here's
be
an
then?
issue. Here's an issue.
Okay.
The votes for the BNP, an ethno-nationalist party in the United Kingdom, were highest in areas where there are more distinctions between cultures. Where you've got two groups of people who see each other as others, living right side by side, and they're divided. And that's a worry I have, because I don't want society to be divided.
Fractured, yes.
It concerns me. I want to be clear, and I make this clear because of how touchy of an issue it is. I'm not being one-sided on the issue of immigration. We've had many successes, and it's been great in many cases. But there's also another side you need to look out for, which is a fractured society.
Yes, and where would you then say is the line that you draw in the sand?
I don't think... it's difficult to say a line you draw in the sand because it can be perhaps too dictatorial, right?
Yeah, but if you're...
But I would say that cultural cohesion, to the extent that people don't see each other as others, would be something you should strive for.
And how do you strive for that?
Well, there are many ways. I would say one, cultural understanding between groups.
And how do you foster that? These are generic
You can foster
statements.
that, alright. Immigration more evenly spread out over a longer period of time, where people are slowly introduced. Because this is the thing, it's a problem with humanity, where if we see problems too drastic, we retract inward.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that a particular success example with immigration is Scotland. It's a very tolerant society,
mm-hmm.
but it's also had immigration over a longer period of time. And I think that because of that, we've been able to adapt to it more. And I would say it's actually a particularly great example of that.
Yeah, but Scotland's also smaller, and in relation to the size, how
per
much
capita though,
has it been lower? Yeah,
it has been lower, and I'd say integration has been better from my experience. I'm all over Scotland, so you know, Edinburgh's pretty multi-ethnic, we'll say.
Not compared to like London.
That's my point. But I think that integration has been very successful in Scotland.
And are you making the case that that's because there's been less immigrants coming in?
No, I'm saying it's more gradual, is what I'd say.
I missed the start of this, that was all.
No, I'm saying that because of humanity, if we see drastic changes, we can retract and react. And let's call it a reactionary way. I'm saying that I think Scotland's been more of a success example because the immigration's been more gradual. There's been more chance for integration. You know? Because I was saying to Max that what I worry for is a fractured society, where people see each other as other.
But the counterposition to that is that you've already had that from the get-go.
What do you mean?
A fractured society. You've always had fractures within society, whether those were enforced by class, or economic standing, or even religion.
Yes.
So there's no real way to mitigate that.
I would say that perhaps,
like, it is always a question of time. And as far as I can tell, the overwhelming majority of people that come to any country will adhere to that code of conduct.
I have a question. It's related to this. I would say that one of the reasons why there's been such a clash between Roman Catholic Irish and Presbyterian Scottish is because of the high levels of immigration suddenly that came to Scotland. Now, to make clear, I have more sympathies with Catholicism than Presbyterianism. I'm not going to pick the King Billy sort of proddy side. However, as a German, where the sort of divide began, I was wondering your thoughts on that.
What do you mean?
What I'm saying?
Are you asking what the divide between
because I'm saying in Germany? Scotland, I think one of the factors was time, how quickly it happened with the famine. Do you see that, or because you're from Germany where this began, would you disagree?
I think it goes back beyond immigration, to be honest. That aspect of it.
But I mean that divide in society.
Yes, I think that goes beyond immigration. I think the leading factor was the regions, the kings switching sides and playing geo or real politics with religion.
So perhaps it's not the best comparison.
Yeah, I don't think so. Because you've got to remember that for as good as she was... What?
I'm just showing the time.
That's alright, we're alright. Mary, Queen Elizabeth executed a fair few Scottish Catholics, as far as I'm aware.
And Presbyterians also, or was that?
Was it Presbyterians?
Well, Scottish Catholics, yes. I'm not sure.
He's calling me. Good.
Have you got any thoughts in regards to immigration and this perhaps time that it takes? Because I'd say as I'd say, as I was saying to Max, one of the factors I value is social cohesion, where people aren't dividing themselves and fracturing. Would you say that your opinion...
What do you think is necessary for that?
What do you mean, sorry?
For there to be social cohesion?
Well, I think one of the factors is that if you're going to have immigration into a country, it should be more evenly spread out and it should be over a longer period of time. I think that if you have
immigration... Oh, no, that's not what I'm asking. I'm saying, what do you... What do people need to be like for that to be necessary?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
What do you think comes from an extended period, like letting things happen more gradually? What change occurs?
Okay, I think
I know it's a slightly obvious question, but I just want to hear what you think.
To use an example, which I fear might not be too good, it's the difference between changing the decoration in one of the rooms in your house to getting a new flat. People gradually become more used to it. I mean, man is a fallen creature. I think that I was saying to Max, I think you were gone, the highest levels of voting for the BNP were in levels of higher, let's call it multiculturalism. Because we were you had mass immigration on a scale into one area where people were just seeing each other as other, rather than
Sorry, I was trying something.
So I would say that one of the factors is that gradually people can almost ease themselves into it. Because humanity is bigoted.
And is that on both sides?
Of course. Because people seek security. And if they're introduced into something too alien, they'll naturally retreat back. And that's both sides. That's just a human flaw that we have. One of the greatest things I fear going forward with the UK or whatever is that we'll have that fractured society.
I think we'll get gradually. I think what we're witnessing right now, and this is in part a tiny little piece of the puzzle, is that we're actually getting better at cross communicating.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, yeah.
And I think that the longer this will play out, regardless what mistakes we will make in our arguments and conversations, the better we get. And I think eventually we will be able to overcome that. And I now just remembered as well what the point I was trying to make about the Grand Inquisitor, because he was actually, this is it ties really neatly in actually, because he was talking about this is the Grand Inquisitor. He said that all humans have been driven by a unified humanity, all of them, whether it was Napoleon to Genghis Khan to Hitler. Doesn't matter who. Everybody dreamt of a world where all humans, whether they fit their ideal or not, in some shape or form, but where all humans effectively are united. It's been sort of ingrained in our DNA, in our behavioural patterns, if you want, to strive for some sense of unity. We all see the humanity in each other, regardless of where you're from or what you're not, where you're not from or whatever. You still recognize the other as a human, and I think we're probably the closest ever to doing that right now. In the sense that we're no longer in a time where national politics will have any relevance. We're talking global politics. There's no longer countries doing individual things. There's just blocks of people.
I'll agree with you in regards to empathy for humanity. My difference is that I don't see the nation state as a blockade to that.
Neither am I, but I'm saying that the relevance of the nation state. The nation is the culture, right?
Okay.
Let's say the nation is the culture.
All right,
nationhood is culture, right?
Okay.
Let's take that. That doesn't need to have a sovereign body, necessarily. Maybe not sovereign in the fullest extent. It needs to have the means to have its voices heard. But it doesn't need to be an independent, completely separate entity bound by diplomatic treaties. It can be part of a collective of nation states.
But just because it's
what Germany is
independent
Russia,
doesn't mean it's separate.
It does in
if
a lot of sense.
Let's say we talk about the nation state as the government. It still relies on other governments. It's a world economy, for example. It's a world culture.
But
almost.
let's say instead of having a nation state, and you just have the nation, which is just the people, and they can be relied upon to govern themselves or delegate the governance to the parties that are most capable of doing so, to their local experts and people, and then come to an understanding on big issues like security and.
Is that
how is that? I don't know.
Is that just? I'm not entirely sure you're getting at. Is that not just a confederacy within a country, as in a country, as in a nation state?
Sure, but not really, because now you have a sovereign body in the form of Parliament, let's say, to use the British example, that governs and regulates a lot of things that it cannot possibly do or know. Like, I don't trust. This isn't to scorn anyone that sits there, but I wouldn't trust some droopy Oxbridge dude to understand the necessity of NHS funds and where they're needed.
But I'm just not entirely clear on how that relates to saying that the nation state isn't necessary, because it's still working within the paradigm of the nation state, even if it's devolved. For example,
say that again, please.
Britain is a nation state, right?
But
Scotland, it's devolved to Scotland within that paradigm of the nation state.
What is devolved? Sorry,
Scotland's parliament.
Yes,
that's devolved within the nation state.
Yeah.
But you still have the nation as an entity, as the nation state. As
right.
Entity.
Right. But let's say that's no longer necessary. Let's say the nation state, the body that you say is purely administrative. It basically regulates taxes, works out your tax codes, works out all the formalities, the stuff that the individual local authorities wouldn't have the time to work out. Like a centralized bureaucratic body. I know in principle that's what it's meant to be, but...
The EU, are you referring to?
Maybe,
okay.
Yes. But with a system in place that gives every region and every individual within those regions equal footing and equal standing. As opposed to being held hostage to the tyranny of the majority. And always being at risk. See, if you're worried about a split country, then you shouldn't have a system like the parliamentary democracy we have now, where the majority of people don't vote for the party that's in power.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get where I'm coming from?
No, I get it. It's something...
Because there's nothing more divisive than politics.
But when I talk about integration and the ability of another, is the ability to work within that framework regardless.
In what sense?
I'm able to still operate under...
What framework, sorry?
Well, I'm able to still operate, for example, under a Labour government, even though I didn't vote Labour. It still works. I mean, even... Let's say my county is majority Conservative, which it's not. I can still work under the Labour government. Because it is devolved. And even where it's not, that's fine, because there are other levels of checks and balances that are not Labour, that are maybe non-partisan or Conservative or Liberal.
Mm-hmm. Why is it cause you so much bother than that there's a different culture present? I mean, there's a different...
That's on a societal level where people, for example... like physical clashes between people, people physically avoiding each other.
But you can count those incidents down on to hand.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, like, let's take...
Sure, but you can't say that all the incidences that happen between migrant or immigrant and local are culturally motivated.
I haven't said that.
I'm just saying. But if you're
going to... Then why are you bringing it up?
If you're no.
Again, it's a factor of A
if you're
factor
going to
versus B
assume
factor.
that... If you're going to assume that there are clashes, you can't say that all of these clashes are necessarily culturally motivated or as a consequence of culture.
But it's still a factor to look out amongst many.
Right, but why are you so insistent on that single one?
Because that's what we've been discussing.
I guess that's
the one you bring up quite a lot.
That's what we've been discussing.
Yeah, true, but we're trying to establish. I understand, and I get where you're coming from. But what we're trying to establish is where does that apprehension come from for this one particular factor?
No, it's not this one particular factor. There's also class factors, for example.
Okay, you never talk about that though.
I do. I haven't to you guys. I was talking about it the other day.
When? What did you say? What were we talking about?
Basically, I was saying that, for example, since moving up to Edinburgh, I've noticed far more of a class distinction than I had previously noticed. Especially in regards to the way people think. I hadn't realised was so prevalent in my mind. Now, this is only since moving up to Edinburgh, so it's not necessarily a factor I want to discuss fully for fear of saying some unformed classist opinion.
However, you're more worried about that than
I was going to say that. That's weird.
Assumption.
What?
You're more worried about that than a racist assumption.
Hell no. I'm more worried about a racist
assumption. Why don't you...
Because that's more socially ostracized. I'm worried about both because I don't want people being judged by just their groups. But I know that a classist opinion will be far more tolerated than a racist one. And there's reasons for racist ones not being tolerated because it's a horrible thing. It's horrible. I've witnessed it. It's awful.
Dude, you sound like a politician.
I sound like someone who's just putting forth my opinion amongst
more
people who disagree with them than agree with them.
Which is quite courageous, to be fair. Yeah. But at the end of...
Look, immigration isn't something I enjoy discussing because it's a touchy subject and it can easily hurt people's feelings, which is something I'm not out to do.
I see.
I know what it's like to be someone who's not in the in-group. Hell, in class, I'm the only person with the views I hold.
Yeah.
I know the feeling. It's not nice. I've spoken to people who've been under those circumstances for class and racial and whatever reasons, gender as well. It's not nice. It's a factor I care about.
So how about we just try to get rid of those factors first before we start?
I would. Well, I'm not.
Before we start addressing the
more challenging.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying.
And in fact, do you not think they're causally linked too?
I'm worried
Let's say
about
if we get racism away, or we get real racism away, don't we also get the cultural disconnect away?
Yes.
To some extent.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm arguing for. That's why I'm worried about this fractured society.
So you're really a lefty?
I don't think it's lefty. I think it's more classically liberal. I think it's more individually focused.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're a closet lefty.
I don't care either way. I don't care either way. I've never held much of an identification with either label.
Oh, you sure?
You do kind of say you're...
But that's a meme in class because I'm seen as the righty. In truth, I don't see myself. If anything, I'd probably identify more with the label of centrist.
To be honest, I did do the same
if
thing
it's
when
not
I was surrounded by Tories. I'd just call myself a communist.
Yeah, but you're not.
Yeah.
If anything, I prefer the centre because I see the necessity for the left and the right. I don't...
Well, yeah, of course.
I mean, hell, one of the persons I'd say, as wanky as it might sound, I know he gets ripped on, who formed my political thinking, at least as a starter, was Carl Benjamin Sargon of Akkad, a centre-left liberal. Uh-huh. I know he gets mocked and such, but I've been surrounded by lefties my whole life. Mm-hmm. I've known very few actually right-wing people.
Yeah, it seems to be much more ostracized here for sure.
So it's not really a label either way I identify with. Sure, I maybe empathize with the idea of right-wing more because it's more suppressed and it's the underdog. And I tend to have...
That's a very British characteristic anyway. To
But
identify with the underdog.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. to be honest, apart from being a wee shit poster, I've never really identified with either left or right.
Well, we're all in the same boat then, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I think the more you learn, the more you know, the more confusing it gets and the harder it gets to form an informed opinion.
I tell you one thing though. See, I always... Perhaps it's because, I mean, let's say growing up in high school and such, when you get politics class, I was always seen as the right winger. When we get to issues of immigration, I get nervous and I get jumpy. Because it harkens back to when these labels of racist and such would just get thrown around willy-nilly for disagreeing with the majority. And it still happens in uni today, for example.
Yeah, true.
And it's for example, as someone who's not an ethno-nationalist, who has debated ethno-nationalists, to bring up an example from the prospect that isn't ethno-nationalist and get compared to them and called them is something that's it's harmful to anyone who isn't an ethno-nationalist.
No, I agree.
And I'm not saying you're doing that.
No, that we've tried to avoid that.
It's something that I've noticed.
But by the same token, some of the rhetoric that you use, and this may just be and this is something we all do, right? Because you're just repeating something you heard somewhere, said somewhere, whether it's a headline, tagline, whatever. We all risk sounding like that at some point, or sounding like something that we're not.
But do you not think there's an element of and again, I'm not accusing you guys of it, but when you accuse someone of sounding like something, it takes away from what they're actually saying, and you're almost saying you look like this character.
Well, it depends. It depends on who you're talking to, right? If you're talking to the average Joe in the street, maybe. But if you're talking with someone who is meant to be in command of language and understand the power of words, then maybe that case, maybe not, because there's a difference between people trying to make headlines. Or even trying to sympathise or speak to a particular demographic of, let's say, white straight British males, just for the fun of it, or people who are just trying to express a view that they can't really form. Do you get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's a case of we all just need to go back and learn how to refine ourselves.
But I also think
because the points that we're trying to make are very, very nuanced and require a lot of detail, and we're living in a time where people don't spend a lot of time on detail and nuance. So we're getting judged by the first sentence that we say. That's why it's important that we make sure it's something that you can't dispense with a comment like that. Because if you can,
with a comment like what, sir?
With a comment like, "Oh, you're just a racist," or "Oh, you're just a lefty," or "You're just a hippie," or "You're just this," whatever, right? You know, the problem there is that we're held hostage by what we say. We're held accountable by what we say. And never has there been more social scrutiny than now.
Because it lasts forever as well now, and people can have a permanent,
but
small piece of it rather than the whole.
Apologies to relate it back to myself, but it's something I've kind of had on my back. I've been meaning to get out. Is we're talking about refining these points. Sometimes I feel that the sort of social circles we're in are to apply these labels, which I don't much like, left wing. I feel like with issues on, let's say, immigration, because people find it so easy to tar that as just racist, I don't get the chance to refine it because I'm always on edge in fear of being called that. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing.
So I can never.
But the thing is, that's why you need to have conversations like this, where you do get called out on the things that, to someone who's not, who doesn't maybe necessarily share all of your points of view, who does see that reflected in there. Or you can, at least what I'll say is, the very least I can see is how someone could construct a narrative out of what you've given me. If I was an evil guy or an evil asshole, or someone who was just trying to cherry pick, I could easily malform.
I know.
Reconstruct your argument into something it's not.
Here's the thing: when we get in these discussions on this podcast, I actively avoid the issue of immigration.
You shouldn't. Do you know why? Because to anyone, even if it's just one dude listening somewhere, doesn't matter. You know, what you're doing right now is unraveling the way you think with all its inconsistencies and flaws, and that's not a bad thing, I don't think, because you're being honest and you're being truthful, and that's all you can be at this stage. You're only 19. We're all just young people, and to anybody to expect that we can come out with a fully fledged, fully formed political philosophy, well thought out, well rehearsed, it's just naive. And to assume that we can just, I don't know, like a master rhetorician, just, you know, waltz our way through all sorts of barrages of accusations and criticisms, even whether they're justified or not, it's just immature. And to us, that's what I mean. We're all held accountable by what we say, but at the end of the day, I hope that the general maturity of the conversation will go. This isn't just our conversation. I mean, this conversation is a conversation that's being had everywhere, right? It's not like immigration is a new topic, but that we can all elevate, let's say, the civility of our discourse to the point where we understand what we mean, and where we don't try to soundbite the fuck out of each other and mine each other's statements for salacious comments, because that's the real issue, where everybody's looking for some sort of outrage point where they can,
rather than listening to the whole.
Yeah, that's what it's about. And I understand that you're not racially motivated, we all get that, but the issue is that sometimes when you're determined to sum up your entire point in a snappy little sentence that is designed to grab attention,
that's what you come across as.
Yeah. But at what point in this discussion have I done that?
I don't think you have today, but
no,
I think at times you do.
But that's the problem, is that it's easy to say at times you do that, but I haven't done that here.
No, we're not saying you have.
No.
Is that...
But there are still points in the way you...
I would
sometimes
say that
when you have to tiptoe around what you're saying, is those are the points where it is most crucial to be in charge of your language.
But should this not then be an argument against pointless ad hominems and attacks on character that shut down these debates?
Totally. But that being said, though, we would try and, or what I was trying to do is give you an understanding of what it looked like on the other side.
I know.
And that's always important to do.
I would probably argue, though, that because of the situation I'm in, I'm probably the most careful with my language out of... when in debate with, for example, our class. Because I need to be. Because I'm surrounded by people in this left-right paradigm who aren't...
But why? Why are you so afraid? You shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes like that.
Right, but in the current social climate, with how eager people are to just slander people as racist...
Yeah, but nobody's going to persecute you.
But you see this, for example, in class, where people are just going, oh, but he's a racist. He's a bit of a racist.
I've not heard people say that.
I have.
They say it as a joke, I think. Was it?
Actually, hell, even people were on Fridays. I've noticed that in particular.
What, people just
throwing around the word racist at people? And my problem is that you're putting yourself as the moral arbiter on other people. You're assuming you know their thought process, and then you're casting them as a heretic or whatever you want to call them. You know what I mean?
But that point goes for our side too, then, or your side. I was about to say, yeah. We make the same mistake if we accuse the other side of oversimplifying their points, which we do. Mm-hmm. So it's a slippery slope that we all have to watch. It's like you say, it's the golden middle ground, the balance. But again, that's meant to be
in this
achieved.
Paradigm, which I'm not too fond of, I'm the one that's surrounded, and that's why I feel like
discriminated against.
Sure. No, but it's being an outsider, which I'm fine with. It's just, again, it's the personal attacks I just can't be fucked with.
That's fair.
Yeah, but you shouldn't take them to heart. You in your heart know that you're not a racist.
I know, but it's when you're surrounded by people, and it's that look of heretic or that accusational. I mean, when you're making a point, and every single other person in the class.
But you've sought that too.
Right, because I believe it's the right point. I'm just saying it makes it more difficult.
But there were points when you weren't able to articulate your point of view, let's say, and you've come out with these meaningless statements just to provoke.
When? In class? No, but I mean, when I say, I'll specify, in class or out with class?
I can't say for class because I've not been to every single one.
But my point is, if it's out with class, of course I'm going to be a bit more shitposty and jokey because we're not engaged in
but that doesn't aid you.
Right, and that's why I don't do it as much as I used to.
But that's not the point. The point is that the real fear that people have, and this is a legitimate fear, is that certain facts, or let's say certain pieces of information that float out there are malleable, and they can be used to construct a narrative that suits any purpose. And that's what people are afraid of you doing, because a lot of what you've said, and you've said it yourself, has been informed by populists.
Right, but that works the other way also.
Of course it does. But that's an argument that, I would make for either case, for either side. It's not like I'm picking a side here. I'm just saying, again, look at what the other side tries or sees.
I know. And look, so when I'm speaking...
to deflect by saying the other side does it too doesn't mean you should do it also.
And I'm not. That's my point I'm making. That's why I'm looking at it and really trying to analyse what is and what isn't.
Well, the key is really to just have a conversation with those people.
And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that's why we need to get them in here.
That's what I'm saying is why I'm worried that, for example, when I'm saying in class, which is, instead of having that dialogue, they just have these ad hominems like racist or xenophobe or sexist or whatever, is that you don't get to have that conversation. If those are the worries of people, I'd prefer they told me rather than just using these buzzwords that mean nothing and are nothing more than calling me a bastard.
I don't know if because they have a baggage that makes sense to everyone else. You're making a point without having to, I think.
What do you mean?
They're taking the easy up, like the easy. It's an easy way out of actually arguing with you, but it's not also. I think there is an argument behind what they're saying. They just can't be bothered making it or don't have the words to make it.
But it's almost like instead of making an argument, they're doing that. If they had these concerns of saying... I also
think the reason they can do that in... I'm not supporting it, I'm just
explaining No, please.
If you're surrounded by like-minded people and there's one outsider, they can use that buzzword to... summarize a feeling everyone's having, in a sense. You get what I mean?
I know. I just prefer.
You've got to remember, people seek refuge in consensus. They always have. They always do.
I would just prefer that if they're, let's say the example of, let's say, sexist, right? So, it's slightly less charged. Instead of saying, Corey, that's sexist, I prefer they said, I disagree with this. Maybe I think it could be harmful to society, and here's why. Because then you're still saying,
I was going to make that it's a given that when they say that, that's what they mean.
But they're not saying here's why. They're just
I think the here's why is occasionally already there through the baggage of the word itself. It's been said enough times that people already know what
the word is meant to sum up the sentiment that you convey.
But it's still taking out the nuance that's necessary for complex situations.
But I think that's the point I'm trying to make, that the nuance is almost in the baggage of it.
I know, but that's why you have to be more refined in what you say.
I agree, and that's what I'm trying to do.
That's what I'm saying to you. If someone can summarize your point down to that, then the fault is not just with them.
Which is why I am trying to. But
that's all you can
do. The point with about Louis is that I get what you're saying, is that because of its overusage, it's now the case that it can't just be done that way. And I'm not saying, I don't know whether it ever was, because I didn't grow up in the 60s where there was rampant racism. I don't know. But for the time being, in the time that we're in, I just wish people would just specify and make the argument, you know?
I do know where you're coming from.
Again, you're centre left.
Yeah.
But I feel like you and me have had really productive conversations that I've really gained from.
Yeah.
And I don't think never has either of us called each other a sexist, a racist, or a cuck, or a lefty.
That's because I tend to avoid that in general.
And I think that's why we have these productive conversations.
Yeah. But do you get the point I was trying to make?
Yes. But it's also...
And I also sometimes think, when they say that's sexist, or if I say that's racist to you, do you not kind of know where we're coming from?
Only to a certain extent, because you're simplifying it down so much. It can mean... Because I don't even know what racist means anymore. Because it's been used that much.
That's a fair point.
That is a fair... I'm just trying to think of an example where you would say something and you could understand why someone would say that comes across
But here's the thing, even if I understood why it would come across as that, I still don't know the specifics of what they mean. I don't know if they... Let's say someone was to say that they think that women are more suited towards certain jobs, and they say that's sexist. I don't know if that's sexist because they mean that men and women are exactly the same, and that it's all a social construct, or that they think that could discourage equal opportunity and discourage people from doing things they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. Those are two very separate things.
Say that again, sorry.
Let's say someone who thinks that men and women are exactly the same.
Yeah.
And it's all a social construct. Or someone who perhaps thinks that they're different, but doesn't want either gender to be discouraged. They could both be using sexist, but come from totally different angles.
Also stand on the same camp. That's a thought I've had for a while, to be honest.
And where one I could agree with entirely.
But then by the same token, you could also ask, why would you think that some women, and I know it's reducing it, why would you think that some women aren't suitable for certain jobs?
No, I'm not.
If your point of reference is the individual, then you must case.
But I'm not.
Do you get where I'm coming from?
No, because yes, but the argument I'm making isn't from that side. It's from the two people calling them sexist.
Yes, I'm saying that if you're going to look at it from that way, and that's a fair point of view, that's a fair criticism, you also have to look at it from the point of view that someone might say, what caused you to say that in the first place? And what's your reasoning behind that? Because if you're saying women aren't suitable to do certain jobs, then you've got to back that up with just as much nuance and...
Yeah, but one is, let's say, someone who thinks that both genders are exactly the same.
Yes.
One is coming out from a point of view of... I'm sorry, I appear to have...
That women... Yes, I get what you're saying.
Because even then, they're coming from... One could be looking at you and saying you're trying to say that when men and women are different, that's sexist. The other could be saying that you're trying to value one more than the other. It's like I say, it's a difficult example to pull because of the complexity. However, they can still view sexist and view the other side as sexist for different reasons. And because of that, you just should make the argument instead, or lay out your reasons why you think it might be a harmful opinion.
But can't you do that yourself?
That was the point I was originally kind of trying to make.
In that you can see it would be in some way treating someone different. However, because of the nuance required, it's not
satisfying. But if you can reduce it down to those points already, then you can already
argue back.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, because I don't know where they're coming from. There could be a million other ways that they could be meaning it.
I was going to make this...
But not really.
Yeah.
I would find that hard to substantiate.
What do you mean?
Like, in what way could you make that case any differently? What other points of view could you have?
Well, it's difficult to come up on the fly, but it's hardly a subject where there's just two sides.
Yeah, but every side, given what you've just said, has a common denominator, which is that you're making gender a subject of intense... I wouldn't even call it scrutiny, but you're sort of trying to reduce it down as a monocausal factor.
I would say that the common denominator is, let's say, sex, but I would say in many cases that's where it ends, because one is saying that they're both exactly the same, you don't want to build up to them being different, and the other is saying that you don't want to discourage people from acting in the way they want. right? In that they're both dealing with gender, but their way of seeing it as unsatisfactory could be a number of different ways. And the point I'm making with yes, it could still be to do with gender.
No, I know. Just how long?
2 hours.
2. Wow.
Look, all right. To summarize, I just wish that people would be more precise, so that dialogue could be more proficient.
Yeah,
so that we could have these conversations.
Everybody would benefit from that.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Like I said, regardless of what political stance you have, I think that would definitely be. But I think we're moving towards that. It's not.
I hope so.
No, look, I think this is all just. A lot of this is just noise.
I know.
I think we're just trying to figure shit out right now. I think, again, I've said this before. I feel like this whole social media thing and all this outrage and all this primary reaction that we're getting, that's all just a birth effect. Because the first generation that truly connected is ours, and we're so young still, and we're so unable to formularize our opinions and our ideas in a coherent manner and discussing them in a mature way, that we're all just reducing them down to, no, this is bad because therefore let's shame this guy into submission. That's the core issue. It's the outrage culture. The fact that outrage and shame are social currency right now.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. It's the fundamental issue.
Yeah.
And I think when that changes, which will change as we get older, I would hope. I'm sure of it. But as that will progress, I think we will see a lot more actual conversations happen. And I mean, in part, if anything, we can contribute to that by getting people on this podcast and discussing these ideas that are contrary to our own.
Hopefully we're doing that next week.
Hopefully.
With Veronica, right?
Yeah. She's a good one.
Yeah, I like her.
Interesting gal.
I don't think her points of view are that different. I don't even think that most people, whenever they have these arguments, differ in their points of view that much. Or let's say, no.
It's like the two magnets being put the wrong way.
But it's let's not even say their points of view. Let's say their sentiment is the same, but the way it expresses itself to them is different, and the way they express it is different. But the sentiment is the same. Like, I don't think anyone in our class, for instance, isn't motivated by trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
I think we all are. I think just our perception of the world is just different.
Yeah.
And our conclusions are therefore different.
Right.
Right. Let's wrap this bitch up.